I had noticed the lump for weeks, but pushed the thought of it aside. My fingers would brush over it at night, making me feel queasy in the pit of my stomach. I called my OBGYN and asked to speak to a nurse. She told me to come in for a mammogram. After all, I was 35. When I came to the mammogram, they handed me a form with a cartoon drawing of a woman and said to mark any areas on the cartoon woman's breast where I may have noticed a lump in my own breast. I didn't mark anything. I thought surely the mammogram will pick up the lump without me telling them about it. Isn't that what technology is for? The mammogram came back clear, and for a while I was relieved. But the lump was still there and demanding my attention. When I'd call, the nurses would assure me that my mammogram was clear and it was probably just a cyst. I chose to believe them, even though I knew. I hadn't felt well in months, always tired, depressed, just not right. At the time, we were in a financially precarious position with paychecks sometimes not coming and 2 small children at home to care for. My stress level was high, and unconsciously, I put my health on the back burner. In May of 2012, my husband changed jobs, and his salary increased, and we had better insurance. I remember the incredible relief I felt when paychecks came regularly and I could afford to buy our groceries without fearing my card would be denied. Taking a shower one day, I noticed handfuls of hair coming out from the stress I'd been under in that difficult season of our life. I could now deal with a lump in my breast. My doctor assured me he didn't think it was cancer, but sent me to a breast surgeon to have it removed anyway, since it was so bulky. As my husband Jared and I drove to the surgery, I turned to him and said, I know it's cancer. This used to be the size of a quarter, now it's the size of a golf ball. It's cancer. He didn't respond. He didn't know what to say. When I awoke from the lumpectomy, I saw Jared sitting beside me with his eyes red. He had been crying. I knew then that I was right. I had breast cancer. We cried together and asked that unanswerable question we have all asked at some point if you've lived long enough. Why me? My surgeon swiftly came in and said, "You'll get through this," and left Jared and I to deal with the stunning news alone. I went through a right breast mastectomy with an expander placed, chemotherapy, radiation, and finally a left breast prophylactic mastectomy and reconstruction. When chemotherapy was completed, my husband and I went away for a weekend to celebrate. Though I was still very weak and fatigued, we wanted to mark the significance of finishing chemotherapy. I was filled with a passion to go to nursing school that weekend. This had been a dream of mine for years, but through having kids, my husband going to graduate school, moving across the country, living on only one income, and then me having cancer, this dream slowly deflated. Over this weekend, I was almost angry with my husband, telling him, "It's my turn now." "Do it," he said. Little did I know that this would be the beginning of my second act. As soon as we returned to Birmingham, I started looking into possible nursing schools and decided upon trying to get into UAB's Accelerated Masters in Nursing program. Knowing it was competitive and intense, but I figured I may as well do it quickly given my age. I started my prerequisites while I was going through radiation. I would bring my notes to study while I sat in the waiting room. My hair was starting to grow back in. I stopped wearing hats and proudly showed my fuzzy head. I was enrolled in 2 prerequisite classes in the fall and had my final surgery, a 12-hour surgery, 2 weeks after the semester began. I returned to class the following week. In November, I found out I had been accepted into UAB's accelerated program. I was ecstatic but scared. Now that I'm in, I actually have to do this, I would think to myself before falling asleep every night. Having cancer has taught me that being scared is not as big of a deal as I used to think. It's going through with something, even though you are scared, that makes a difference. I also knew this was God's plan for me. When I had initially visited UAB to find out about the BSN to Master's program, I felt his hand on my back and his whisper in my ear, "This is for you. It is your turn." I started nursing school in 2014, and it was so intense. so fast-paced that I often felt isolated from my friends. I carried notes around with me all the time to study, and as soon as one test was over, we'd need to start studying for the next one. There were few breaks. We were sprinting every week to the next test, only to take a deep breath and sprint to the next one. But God led me through successfully, and I graduated in December. In 1 year, I had earned my BSN. I successfully passed the boards and got licensed, and soon after had only one interview open up for me at UAB. I interviewed on the ENT, oral surgery, urology, and plastics floor. I was excited about the floor since it's a fast-paced, busy floor with a lot of oncology patients. I want to focus my master's on oncology because I believe I'll be better able to relate to my patients. I found out a week later that I was hired for a day shift. Almost all of my classmates had to take night positions, so I was very thankful to have a day position. After I started working, I realized that this was the floor I had recovered on after having my final surgery. It is amazing how I've come full circle from being the patient to being a nurse caring for the breast cancer patient. When the diagnosis of cancer came to me, I was initially horrified, but then I was humbled. God's plans are always bigger than our own, but He needed to first refine me through some fiery trials so He could set fire to my dream. He nudged me into things that scare me and still nudges me into things that feel bigger than me, so I always know where the power comes from, Him. I would never have thought of returning to school at 37, never mind trying to become an MP, but God did, and has given me strength and health and desire to do so. In the end, cancer was more life-giving to me than life-taking. I hope that my story will encourage those fighting the fight now, that there is more life on the other side. Thank you.